So, I might be 7 years late to this topic, but better late than never. A couple of my friends and myself were in Austria to start the new year, and it turns out we all had Pokemon GO. This sparked a very old memory of entire crowds chasing down virtual Pokemon and complete chaos everywhere, but I'd never really looked into the depths of how much chaos was caused by this game, so I decided to do my own research and... oh boy, you're in for one hell of a video today. So let's start with the background, shall we? Pokemon GO was developed by Niantic and is an augmented reality mobile game, or an AR game, in 2016. In the game, you create an avatar and you go around catching Pokemon with Pokeballs you get from the Pokestops or gyms. That's too much Poke. You can stick a lure on said spots to be able to get Pokemon to come to you, or you can go out there and explore to find them. You can take pictures with your Pokemon, raise them as buddies, fight Team Rocket, play and fight with other people around the world, so on and so forth. Now it's important to note that if you played the previous Pokemon games, Pokemon GO doesn't work the same in both combat and catching. There's a lot of focus on catching them with Pokeballs themselves, and the combat really boils down to spamming the screen with your finger while you're trying to kill the other side, and then maybe doing moves if they might block them, and so on and so forth. When the game was released, it got a bit of a mixed reputation, ranging from, say, 3 out of 10 up to 6 out of 10. But despite that, the sheer number of players offset those reviews. While there was an awful lot of bugs and glitches back in 2016-2017, the game exploded in popularity. In fact, thanks to its popularity in 2017, the game was the 9th highest grossing mobile game with an annual revenue of $890 million. It was estimated by the end of 2017 the game had probably racked up around $2 billion by that time. And by 2020 the game had pulled in somewhere between $4.2 billion or plus. But what's most interesting about the game is about that around 2016, while it was very profitable, 2017 wasn't so profitable. The game had lost steam, falling off in 2017, but something interesting happened. In 2018, the actual revenue of the company rose, and then went even higher in 2019, superseding the original revenue from release, and has grown ever since. As such, Pokemon GO has been on the rise the past few years and is still relevant to today. So that's the basics out of the way. And just a minor disclaimer, a lot of the footage that you see on screen right now is used from other sources because, well, I've got no way to record my phone and I don't want to dox myself. The sources are in the description. Now for the fun part. This game caused so much disruption in 2016 and 2017 that it was an absolute menace for the world governments. That's just an understatement. There is an entire section on Wikipedia dedicated just to the sheer amount of chaos that this game caused, and it's a very fun read. So what we're going to do is go through a few of them. Now, I just want to say that I'd rather do actually love Pokemon GO. This video is more of a testament to the insanity of people rather than a criticism of the game, because the game's actually quite a lot of fun. Now, we're going to start fairly light, because it's less of a criticism or controversy, but more of something that people don't know about the underground Allure of Lures. Now, Allure is a device in Pokemon GO that you can put on Pokestops to attract Pokemon to the area. It can last for a set amount of time, and people can gather to these Pokestops to collect Pokemon. Don't worry, we won't be getting into Pokestops, because that's caused a lot of problem on their own right. Anyway, thanks to the existence of this lure, businesses have had a clever idea. If a business happened to have a Pokestop nearby, or was a Pokestop, they could purchase lures from the store, put them on the Pokestop, and that would incentivize players of Pokemon GO to come to their business or their area. Not only were businesses doing this, but so were places of worship and also local history trusts. In fact, a lot of places benefited from this system. We're talking national monuments, charities, the businesses themselves. The main point here being that people visit these areas that wouldn't normally go, and as a result, businesses would flourish. And seeing this, a secondary market inadvertently opened up, with a lot of existing data providers such as T-Mobile providing free data for access to Pokemon GO, and Yelp going so far as providing a filter to their maps to allow people to see businesses with Pokestops nearby. Also, for some reason, while researching this bit, there appeared to be a marketed rise in... Yeah, you filthy buggers. Anyway, the most interesting benefit of the game is that it caused a lot of people to have a large amount of foot traffic in the areas of high criminal activity. Now, this was a double-edged sword. It had a massive benefit in reducing crime. In fact, so many crimes were reported because of the game that it would take a very long time to go through, so I'll just talk about a few here. One such example is a 19-year-old in Wyoming who was looking for a Pokemon in Big Wind River and instead found a corpse. 2 people in California playing the game catching a man who was wanted for police for murder, as well as other people managed to catch a pervert inappropriately touching children. How fun. But as mentioned, this was a double-edged sword and it wasn't all good. While there had been a marked decrease in crime by pushing people to those areas, it actually increased the risk of crime happening to the players themselves. People being led into dark alleyways where criminals tend to be to catch virtual Pokemon usually ends up with them becoming the victims themselves. Examples of this include the university students in Maryland being robbed whilst they had their smartphones out at gunpoint, 2 men playing the game were carjacked and robbed late at night in California, and for some reason fireworks were thrown at people in Florida, no surprise, for playing the game in an SUV. And all of this doesn't even consider the sheer amount of people getting into road traffic accidents because they were playing Pokemon GO and not paying attention. Now, I did say I'd cover this, and I kind of lied earlier when I said the biggest criticism is of the people and not the company. This one would be Niantic. See, as much as I like to get my top up of Pokeballs and berries, I'm not sure turning Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, Arlington National Cemetery, the National September 11th Memorial Museum, and Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park as Pokestops is a good idea. These all were locations, by the way, could get Pokestop or gym stuff, by the way, but Niantic has since removed them. Though there are still some locations that are currently used as Pokestops that do not want them to be because people tend to be on their phones rather than paying attention, such as Shanshili Temple in California, which admonishes players for being on their smartphones, or Nijo Castle in Japan, where people aren't really paying attention. In fact, people not paying attention got so bad that I think I'm going to take a tangent to talk about it. Watch where you're Poke-walking? Okay, where do we start with this? Firstly, Dutch rail operators ProRail complained to Niantic as people were walking on railway tracks. Apparently it was unwittingly, but I'm not too sure how you walk across a railway and not realise. But maybe worse than this is in the AMC, the Amsterdam Medical Centre, where they had to ask for a plea for people not to go hunt Pokemon in the hospital. In fact, it got even so bad there that people go into the hospital basement, which housed a television studio for children's programmes, and it is closed off and sterilised, just to hunt Pokemon. But don't worry, if you thought that was bad, it gets worse. The Bosnian government had to issue a warning to their civilians and visitors to not go and look for Pokemon in the minefields. With over 120,000 mines left undiscovered and 600 people having died since 1995 in them, the amount of people going to the minefields was a massive cause for concern for the government. Elsewhere in the world, 2 men had fell 80 to 90 feet off of a bluff and had to be rescued because of playing Pokemon and weren't paying attention. And in Japan, the first kill was recorded by a 39-year-old farmer in 2016 hitting a 70-year-old woman who was just crossing the road because he was playing the game. In fact, it's so prominent in Japan that they had to put up signs to avoid arukusmaho, which means to stare at your phone intently whilst you're walking and not paying attention. And even further to this, Cambodia had to outright ban the game because people were showing up to former genocide sites. Like, Jesus, guys, come on. COVID. It's just COVID. I don't have a funny name for this. In 2020, a different type of pandemic hit the world. COVID. Everyone alive today probably remembers what COVID was at this point, though it is funny to think that it was 4 years ago. Time flies, hey? Anyway, during the pandemic, Niantic had an issue. They had a game that requires you to go outside, except people can't go outside. So, in 2020, they released a new feature that allows you to play remotely. Except, starting in August the 1st, 2021, Niantic began rolling back these changes as part of their exploration bonus update. Players in New Zealand and the US were the first to receive these post-pandemic changes, and they proceed to slowly roll back in relation to the recommendations from the Global Health Organization. This resulted in a lot of criticism, as it affected a lot of people with disabilities, especially from things like long COVID. At the time, the distance from Pokestops and gyms was about 80 meters, and this was reduced to 40. And despite the rising stats of COVID-related variants in the US resulting in overflowing hospitals, Niantic held firm that they were not keeping the pandemic bonuses. As a result, people started to boycott Niantic with the hashtag #HeroesNiantic. The reason why Niantic did this was that they were trying to recover losses from the COVID pandemic. See, as an AR company, their main business earnings comes from selling the data of their players. They do this by doing a bit of AR mapping around the Pokestops, and they can use that data, sell it on to other businesses who can then use up strategies of where people visit. By reducing the distance for players, it meant that the data being sold was more accurate, and that Niantic could generate more revenue. For better or worse, there is a rule of thumb in business: if you want to understand the decision made by a company, look at its profits. Now, I could go on for longer, but I do stand by the belief that Pokemon GO was generally a force for good despite the many controversies. It got people away from the desk and provided a mobile game that wasn't terrible as most of the schlock you can find on the App Store, even if you could still have in-app purchases. I'm going to say the biggest benefit of it all is not just the benefit to businesses and get people back on the street, but I think the fact that certain Pokemon can only spawn in certain continents, thus incentivizing you to go and explore other continents that you'd never gone to otherwise, is maybe the biggest benefit. Or maybe the fact that while you can play solo, you are better off teaming up with other people because you get loads more benefits out of it. Overall, I think the game was a pretty good investment and I enjoy playing it, so take that for what you will. Right, it's time to wrap up and head to bed. I've been Dex. You can find me here, or as always over on Twitch. I'm live Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays and Saturdays if I can be bothered. If you want to find any of my other gaming related content, check out the YouTube Shorts page or TikTok. You can find some very funny clips over there. And you know the rest of the 411 bias point. Check the description, check the original sources, and I will wish you all a good night.